things in a very secure and safe manner. From a financial impact, it's expected to be minimal. The goods and services are being donated by US Ignite and CCI and Comcast. The county is responsible for the pole mounting, so approximately 11 of them, and it's about $13,000 to reimburse for the DES staff time. Given the time that we are financially, I think this is a good opportunity for us to utilize the donation, but also to recognize that this is coming, it's happening. And so it's a great opportunity for us as a county. Part of the engagement, talking to you guys is part of the engagement, but also making sure, as we're moving forward, that people are aware of what we're doing. And at the end of this, the plan is for us to make a recommendation to the county manager upon the completion of the pilot, say, this is what we found out, this is what's happening, what we think we should do going forward. I want to say again, I think I might have not gotten into the detail, but going back to the data piece, I want to make sure people realize that so it's not using pictures, it's not using cell phone data, it is all anonymized based on, I keep using the technical word blobs, that I don't want to even say images because it's, I don't want it to think that it's images of individuals. There's no way you could tell any information, identifying information about a person. The data is not going to be stored ever by a third party. What happens is when what we defined, it's captured and immediately sent to the county. So there is nothing to throw away, nothing to be captured at all by the third party. So it's called edge processing. And then really we're focusing on data that we're already using in other ways, whether it's line of sight by a public safety or in some cases cameras. So this is a way to for us to compare how are we getting this data and how does it compare to other mechanisms that we have, and how is it better and how is it worse. I also want to talk about where the location is. So the location, so we chose the Clarendon area, and we're working with public safety right now to ensure that this is the best location. But a couple of factors played into this. When we originally started the conversation, it was back in the summer when we were thinking about, should we be doing something related to COVID tracking, like how many people are wearing masks or how many people are gathering in an area, and thinking that, well, maybe that's not necessarily the right direction of where we want to head, but looking for somewhere where there were a lot of people and where you'd have a lot of opportunity to compare the pedestrian traffic, the types of buildings that are there. So this area in Clarendon, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, the 2900 block specifically, there's a lot of activity both day and night. On the southern side, in the bottom here is where Mexicali Blues is, and the top is the Ambar. And I can't remember what businesses are on the other side. The other thing is that there are light poles that the county owns in this area, as well as Comcast infrastructure. So we're still working with public safety for them to look at other areas to make sure, is this the best place? We're leaning towards that it is, based on several other factors, but they're just confirming it. The other thing I want to highlight is what the hardware is going to look like. So there's two different types, Colonial and Cobra. The Colonial said it looks very similar to what our Colonial light. I think ours is a different color, and this will be painted to that different color. And then the Cobra style light, so it looks very similar to our Cobra style light. As I'd mentioned before, so I think it's important, we need to make sure that we're educating ourselves, and in a very, confined, small pilot, because these things are happening, and what's the impact going to be around us anyway, so that we can make sure we're aware, and then also be with the different oversight that's being provided by CCI, by US Ignite, by our own internal staff, making sure that the data privacy and security aspect is being considered from multiple different angles as we're moving forward, that can help inform us with other larger projects and other things that happen.
All right, we already have questions, Holly. So
I figured
Jackie?
I was expecting questions.
Jackie, and then Denise.
Yes, this is fascinating, and it's good. So one of my first questions is, are you working with the Clarendon Alliance with the Lion Village Civic Association and the Restaurant Initiative, all three of whom have been intensely involved with public safety in those areas, including pedestrian safety.
So the original conversation started not with the Clarendon Alliance board, but with members of the Clarendon Alliance and the businesses, and that was kind of what caused some of the pivot. With that said, so now we're trying to refine where we are, coming to you guys as a step. But I also think kind of the conversations with the community around is planned as we're going through the process as well.
So I'm not speaking for our Civic Association president, but I expect it's something we'll want to have a presentation on.
Yep.
In Lion Village. And, you know, everyone who's been following Clarendon development for the last, 30 years or whatever, has favorite intersections that I think where they think are the biggest pedestrian issues are. And I'm surprised that you don't end up with the two intersections that are Highland Street, because the Clarendon Highland intersection on one side of the metro stop, and then the Wilson Highland intersection on the other, is where you get a lot of passenger traffic of people coming and going from the restaurants that are basically downstream on Wilson and downstream on Clarendon. So, and it's very difficult to drive through there at any time because of the pedestrian traffic. So that's an interesting mix, whereas it is a little bit lighter, a block off, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I understand. And I think that's a good question.
Thanks.
Yeah, Jackie, you may be surprised, but there's really not agreement within the Clarendon restaurants, Clarendon Alliance.
on that, yes. But that's why maybe also going to the Civic Association would be another good thing. And yes, some of those actually restaurant owners are also residents.
Yeah.
All right, Denise, and then Kevin.
Okay. Hi, Holly. My question is, how did you select the particular location, neighborhood, and can another community be on the wait list? Because we have a big issue here at Columbia Pike, where I'm situated, and we're working with the Transit Bureau, and I'm wondering if any of the technology will include anything related to parking devices.
So make sure to break this down. So on the first question about, is there a potential to look at other places? Potentially, yes. I think this is where part of the reason I think that they were looking for high pedestrian traffic, which is why the Clarendon area seemed to be, from public safety, one of the highest areas of pedestrian traffic. Not saying that there aren't others. But they're going back and looking at their information now so that we can confirm that this is the best place. The other piece is the right types of infrastructure. I'm not familiar off the top of my head with where our poles are located and where they would be located, as well as where Comcast has infrastructure. So I think it's all good input to take as we're kind of making sure, is this the best location?
Yeah, the option. Yeah, if I could, Holly, the option at the end, Denise, is that at the end of the year, hopefully this is successful, and we've proven there's real value to the community. You know, we've been talking about the fact that we're known as the 20th century model for the 20th century in terms of delivery of services. Well, regrettably, we're approaching the third decade of the 21st century, you know, and all these technologies are coming to bear. And what I know, Comcast, and they've been great to work with us, and they'll put this anywhere we want, but they'd like to see us expand this concept at the end of the 12 months and say, could this be done in other places? And again, like in an effort of collegial, it's not competition. Can we complement each other in terms of they have infrastructure, we don't. In this one case, we don't have any fiber there. And so if they could stand up something for us that we could learn from, then maybe there are other areas in the community we go with. And certainly they're very interested. You should know that Comcast has, we're not the only city they're looking at, community. They're looking at Philadelphia. They're looking at Greensboro, Holly? I think.
Greensboro.
And so this is a wonderful opportunity in tight budget times to dip our toes into this learning laboratory and see what might happen.
The other thing, and Denise, to your other question about parking, I think that is an interest. I think we were trying with what's really cool about the technology, you basically have it do whatever we want it to. But we're trying, once again, let's take it very small. And so we're focusing specifically on that public safety, pedestrian safety first, but there is the capability to expand it to well beyond that. But I think when you start expanding, I'm not saying that parking is not a safe space to play in, but kind of thinking through all of the different angles and aspects of that. But we need to be very slow and considerate about how we're doing it. But I also recognize parking is a problem. I think.
All right. Well, we have three in the lineup, and that's probably going to be we might have to send you some more questions, Holly. But Kevin, John, and then Mike. So Kevin, you're up.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Holly. I was hoping you could provide a little additional detail on the actual technology. You talked about the information being collected being anonymized, but
Yep.
still you said you can monitor the movement of people. It sounds like it has the capability to distinguish if people are even wearing masks. And it sounds like there might be some public-private issues associated with that. And I wonder also, are you going to share any of this information with law enforcement?
So let's see, make sure I take all these questions the right way. The capability is there to do a lot. We are not doing anything that we think would put the data privacy and the personal information of a person at risk. So there is not the way that we're using the sensors. We don't see. There's no person that's identifiable at all. There's nothing that we will ever have, or anybody will ever have, that could identify a person with what we're doing. Are you sharing with public safety? Yes, with our watch desk. So coming up with the use cases and the data that's being generated. We're working very closely with our public safety, specifically with the fire department, to have them look for the metrics of their response time, they're in for the situational awareness. So it's not just the response time, but it's how much information they have when they are responding. There are nuances that might impact the quality of the response that they have. So we're working with them for them to look at what are some of the challenges, what are some of the things that they would be looking to improve, so we could build that into the metrics that we're trying to capture.
Okay.
And was there another question? Was there another question in there?
Yeah, the first question regarding, can you provide additional detail on the technology itself? And I mean, I understand you told us generally how it works, but can we get some information so we can look at it?
There's some information that we have in a summary document. I don't know if it's going deep enough for you, but I have that could be available.
Okay, thank you.
That'd be great. Thanks, Holly.
Yep.
All right, John, and then Mike.
So real quick, I'll just kind of follow on where I think Kevin was going with that, which is that we've declared that privacy is a fundamental human right in Arlington County. And so while I trust that you're not doing anything that you think would violate those issues, and while the design of the capability is such that it wouldn't violate any of those issues, how does the public verify that independently? And so I think it'd be really critical to be able to describe that to the public and have them be able to validate that those privacy concerns are being taken very seriously, and it's not a just trust us type approach.
And that's why I think we have the multiple parties looking at this to make sure that as we're moving forward, we're considering that and understanding where are we sitting with kind of keeping that trust. Because I think you're right, that is a big piece of this. I'd mentioned earlier staying within our swim lane, but what does that mean within the swim lane, and making sure that people understand where we're moving. So yes, I think that the goal is, and this is why I said at the very beginning, it's baby steps to make sure that as we're slowly moving forward, that we're keeping that trust.
All right, Mike.
Hi, Holly.
Hi.
Later on our agenda, we have a more general set of principles and policies that we've been thinking about that would inform exactly this type of, I'll say, responsible experimentation. One of the takeaways from my research on this is that it's usually not as productive when the technology is installed and we ask ourselves the question, hey, what could we do with that? And it's much more productive when we say to the commercial providers something, for example, as our interest here is pedestrian safety. And so here's a set of metrics or policy outcomes that we're looking for. Can you give us a technology that will help deliver that outcome? And so maybe we'll get through this later on today and we'll make it available to you. But both this and both your last presentation on equity and this, which I'm enthusiastic about how we get our arms around this thing. Both of those, I think, would have benefited in some way if we could put forth this set of principles and recommendations, because just as John was stating in a very principled way about privacy, we've been working on some thoughts that would give this type of guidance. And I'll say in closing, I know it's always going to be give and take, because a lot of the innovation is going to come from the commercial space, and we're going to have to learn from them, and then they're going to have to learn from us. But generally speaking, if the public sector can be clear about the outcomes that it's pursuing, then a lot of problems can often be avoided.
And so that is part of what, as we're working through the presentation and the hope to be on the board agenda in December, is to be able to provide some specifics related to those outcomes.
Okay, thanks. David, you'll need to be brief, okay?
Yes, I just wanted to
Thank
follow
you.
up on my question that I wrote in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. Have you?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it.
There you go. Have you guys written a privacy impact assessment that could be released to the public? This is following on John's question.
So one of the things we will be performing a privacy impact assessment. It's a tool that we have internally that we will be doing on this project.
I would strongly encourage you to consider devising one that can be released to the public. That's something the federal government does, and I think that's very helpful for giving them awareness of projects like this.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you very much, Holly. See, 2 in a row, Holly.
I know.
December. We didn't see you for months, and then we get you twice.
Don't worry. I'm working. I'm here.
It's great.
Thank you very much. It was great to hear the importance and hear your input. So I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Now we're going to move to meeting minutes, and Angela sent out a new a new rendition because a couple of you found things before we even came to this meeting. So Angela, could you just highlight? I know Frank had a few edits. John, I think, had a few edits. What am I missing, Angela? Are you unmuted? All right. Did anybody else have any edit? Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Yeah, here I am.
Yeah,
It was John and Frank that submitted some changes, some updates.
Okay. To each
and
of their.
Can I find those? Yes, I did correct those and send them out this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much. Does anyone else have any other additions, edits to the October minutes? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adopt.
I move to adopt.
All right, John, second. Who's got the second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. And Angela, it's so nice to have those minutes done every month. Thank you so much. A quick housekeeping. We're scheduled for December 23rd. I wanted to make sure, I don't know what people's plans are around the holidays. Obviously, it's Kwanzaa, it's Christmas, it's Hanukkah. I mean, we have all kinds of holidays around that. So, will we have quorum on the 23rd of December, or do we want to meet a week before? Just wanted to check with you all to see what the census of the commission was.
I could go either way.
Earlier sounds better. December 23rd is too close to Christmas.
So that would be
Denise's birthday.
and it's Denise's birthday. Ooh, we could have a virtual birthday party for you.
December 24th.
Okay, so the week before, can people make that then?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll all be home anyway.
Okay,
Yes.
great. All right, so we'll move it a week. Angela, if we can just note that so that we don't we'll meet a week before and we'll get that done.
Okay.
Now, thank you. And we only have two more two more items, and they're both really important. Mike, you want to take it away with the digital planning, and then, as usual, our final batter will be Frank.
Okay. Yes, I'd be happy to. I'd ask you to just transport yourself back to our meeting 2 months ago, September 23rd, I believe it was, when I went through a deck of PowerPoint slides entitled Digital Arlington, a starting kit for transforming digital planning. I won't try to take you back through that again. I'll just say that the very last slide in that presentation posed a series of next steps. And one of them was to, as a commission, take action on a 40-page white paper, or perhaps the distillation of the principles and the recommended policies out of that, similar in style to what John had furnished to us from Johns Hopkins University regarding contact tracing for the pandemic that we sent forward before. We did not turn back to that last month. We have been aware that there's possibly other, developments inside the county, that would create documents that would similarly suggest some generic or kind of across the board ideas about broadband and digital services planning. And I think our intention was to sort of marry them up, to try to make sure they go forward at about the same time. The next recommendation on next steps was to begin a public engagement process, around this notion of digital planning, which at present does not exist within the county. There is a state legislative mandate to begin to plan, and the position taken in the white paper is that Arlington should, of course, meet the mandate, but also look at that pretty broadly, sort of along the lines of some of the projects we've talking about, is how would Arlington go about planning the digital space to address digital equity? How would it go forward planning the digital space to address public safety? So some of these issues are quite predictably coming up, and some of them have really been thrust to the fore by the pandemic, those being disease, contact tracing, and virtual schooling. So what I sent to Mary on Monday, and I'm not sure if people received it, was literally just a cut and paste excerpt from the 40-page paper that pulls out only the principles and the related recommended policies for each. It runs about 3 pages long.
The
and
eight
then
principles.
I'm sorry?
Right? 8, right, Mike?
Eight principles and a set of policies that are derived from each of those. And then Monday night of this week, I sent a transmittal letter modeled after the one that was used for the contract tracing. And so for me, tonight, a home run would be, do we want to send this forward so that it can be available to those people in the county who are working on projects that might benefit from these thoughts? There really isn't an opportunity on today's agenda to have a very lengthy discussion about it,
Right.
although I would be more than happy to respond to any questions that folks have. And I know people have had the document at their disposal for, I don't know, a couple of months now. So why don't I stop talking and sort of start listening and see where we want to go from here?
Questions?
And, if I can take another quick bite at the apple, I forgot to say, one of the obvious next steps is to decide to publish a broadband and digital services master plan in Arlington, which I think would fulfill the legislative mandate. But at present, there's been no action taken to do so, even though the law was effective in 2018.
John?
So I'll dive in. I was waiting to see if anyone else wanted to, but here we go.
Hey, go for it.
So, Mike, I really appreciate, as I said the last time, the paper that you put together. I thought it is wide ranging and comprehensive. I also agree that we can't wait. We need to get moving, especially given the legislative mandate. And I feel like this should be kind of pro forma for us, given that this was substantially the content of the revised charter that we put forward and that the county board approved, and puts this type of policy guidance firmly within the tech commission's area of domain and policy guidance to the board. So there's no one else who is going to recommend this to the board, and I think it's incumbent upon us to do it. My only edit to your document would to potentially assert that the Tech Commission should be either at least in a lead, or at least maybe a lead, or at least an advisory role in the development of that digital services master plan, and participate in the public engagement process that is sure to follow in its development.
I completely agree, and I'm kind of itching to render some advice. You know, once we finished our charter, we had a long discussion about advisory, and I think it is the noun form or the adjectival form of advice. And so let's render some timely advice.
Any other comments about the 8 principles? Because that's kind of the underlying, the foundation for the framework. Jack?
Hey, I'll weigh in on this. I think they were good, Mike. I think you laid out some good points there. We're looking forward, the manager, looking forward to seeing the results of the digital services working group that's been working, see where they come in. And then we'd be able, I think we need to take a step back and look at what you're proposing, and how that could inform what they've been working on. And that's going to be quite helpful, I think. The bigger issue, though, I think we're going to be facing as we go forward, like somebody mentioned this, I think it may have been John, the time clock's ticking. You know, we're talking about, we just ended up having a discussion about the whole area of municipal IoT, information IoT, which, you know, there's the public privacy lines are blurred in that.
Yeah,
And,
the Internet of Things.
Yeah, and our elected officials, and I'll be very candid, and if they were here with me, I think they would agree, it's a different world. You know, it's they used to a world where they manage, control. They say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and no one else is going to do anything else. But the telecom operators see big money in this. You know, we're putting up 5G poles. They're putting things into antennas. Who knows what they're collecting for information, and what can we do? You know, if you look at the city of Chicago, what they do, they lay out a whole policy of privacy. They say, here's what we're doing, here's what we're collecting, here's the data we're going to prevent. And then at the end of it, they say, by the way, if you want to find out what the telecommunication industry is doing, here's the website to go find it. And so you go out and find it, you get just blurry information. It doesn't say anything about it. And then the other thing that's happening is becoming interjurisdictional. You know, we could set out up and say, well, Arlington's going to say, this is what's going to happen in Arlington, and heaven help it, nothing else. But Lyft, think about Uber, think about, the lines are being, Connect DMV, which is a major effort out of the Board of Trade, to define how we're going to share information across the region is coming up. So Arlington won't have, the era of Arlington saying, we're going to have a board meeting, this is the way it's going to be, and that's it, it won't happen any longer. But we can contribute to the definition of a policy. And that policy, I think, is going to be more than just what are we doing internally, collect information, and how we're sharing it, but how do we deal with this IoT that's coming on us, and the AI that's going to follow in with that. And at a minimum, I think we have to. It's uncomfortable to have this discussion, and you know, I'd like to think that we could have one meeting of the ITAC, and we could make advice to the board, and it's done. But it won't happen. You know, I know Jonathan. I don't know if Jonathan Adelstein's still on, and Frank, but this is really this is happening in every community around the country, and we're going to have to address it. So I really thank you for taking your time, Mike, to put that together, because it's a set of principles. Now, are we all going to agree with it? No. But you know what? We're going to have a discussion about what would work and what won't work, and what can we come for to get something that works. Because if we don't, as John said, it's going to take us over before we even know it. It's going to go right by us. So I'll stop talking.
No, that's great. David? Thanks,
I
Jack.
just wanted to offer support, not necessarily for the 8 principles, although I like those too, but specifically for adding a 12th slice for broadband and digital services to the county's comprehensive plan. I think that is a super important part of the letter, and that's the bit that I want to signal extra support for and extra focus on.
Yeah, that's the 12th element, David, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's-
exactly.
yep.
That's what I think is really valuable, and I want to strongly support Mike in his effort to send a letter advocating for that.
Okay. So what, David, if I'm hearing you correctly, then what you'd like to see is next in December when we meet a letter that does have that kind of as the lead in terms of adding that 12th element. And here's some of the thinking that's gone behind some principles that, again, are the first draft of from the Tech Commission, but need public engagement and discussion and all those things. Is that reflective? Does that make sense?
I mean, that makes sense, although I'm not sure that's what I was saying 100%, because I'm looking at the letter now, and I see that the second paragraph is about that. So, like, I noted that element is present, and I really wanted to emphasize that, because I think while Mike was talking about the 8 principles, I think we've got to get into the county's comprehensive plan, and that's
into
super
the
important.
institutional piece. Yep. We do. Okay. Jack, do you have your hand up again, or did you have, or is that from the other?
I think I fell asleep. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Mike, is that enough? I don't think you're going to get your home run tonight.
Well, I feel like, David, that the letter as written does exactly what you say, and Mary kind of does exactly what you say. As I read it, it says we're proposing to add a 12th slice, and we're offering these principles and recommended policies. And unless someone has critical feedback on those principles and the document that Mike produced as wanting to change it, I don't think it's presented in a way that says this is the last word, but this is kind of a framing of the issue and how we could go about thinking about it for people who probably haven't been thinking about this in a lot of depth. And so I would, unless there was someone who's dreadfully opposed to it, I would be interested in motioning to approve the letter tonight.
All right, you're making the motion then, John? Anyone second?
I'll second that. I concur
Okay,
with
David?
John's assessment.
Okay. All right, so on the floor, to pass the letter as written and present that to the board.
And I'm absolutely willing to entertain, friendly amendments or people who want to table it. But if it's just silence, then I think there's no time like the present, given the clock is ticking. So.
All right.
Mary,
I don't hear.
I of course would favor moving ahead with it. I'm a little bit troubled by the universal agreement, the time is of the essence, and that the result of that is inaction. And so I would take a position that I am completely willing to listen to anybody who says this first stab at it got a couple things wrong. That might happen within the county staff. That might happen in public engagement. That might happen right within this commission. And I have no problem with that. I'm trying to invite consideration and improvements to this. But if everybody is waiting for somebody else to do this, my fear is it won't happen at all. And that we're in a very good position to put something on the table and draw out the public engagement and the county staff engagement and the county elected officials engagement. There's no point of no return on this. It's more like a point of embarkation.
Absolutely.
Like, begin this.
Yeah, I think what the letter is doing is trying to frame the debate, really. Let's frame the discussion, right? Denise and then Jack.
Have we released it anyplace else as a draft for comment?
We haven't, Denise. We haven't.
Although I'll say with two exceptions. One is back in April, I provided it to the county manager, his deputy, Jack, and David, because they were the folks who had been engaged in the creation of the task force. And then as soon as I shared it with the membership of the council of this commission back in September, I went ahead with permission and sent it to the other broadband and digital services task force members. So that in grand total is about, 10 more people. But those are the only non-IT commission members who have had access to the document. And whoever they
And
chose
Jack,
to share it with beyond that.
I was going to say, can we release it to your staff, Jack, as a draft for comment?
Well, again, it's the role of the commission. You're advisory to the board, not me, or the
Right,
manager.
right.
So yeah, you can, but I don't have any authority.
But
Yeah, I
Look
think,
at it, nice seeing it, but
yeah, kind of the role is, all right, board, we think you ought to think about this.
yeah.
and I
Right.
so completely agree with you, Denise, that I kind of did that back in April. Here's my
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah, he did it.
I would add also that we've been thinking, at least for the adding the 12th slice, at least 6 months to a year. And so
Yeah.
I'm extremely comfortable with pushing on the 12th slice and pushing that forward. So I think if there aren't objections to the overall content of the letter today, I'd be in support of the motion.
Okay, any more discussion? We'll take it to vote if there isn't any more comment.
Yeah, Mary, I had
Yeah,
one
Jack,
comment.
go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make to Mike is it'd be helpful, Mike, to give some thought to how this would roll out, with the framework for having this discussion. I know way back when you and I and Ken sat enjoying some good wine in a public space, we were able to communicate much better than we do over this Teams meeting. But laying out, taking the lead on that and being the primary point of advisory to the board, how do you inform what groups in what time period to arrive at this discussion? Because it's really, as we talked about earlier earlier this morning with Tim Dempsey, in terms of what he's doing, he raised the awareness that this is important, talking about broadband as an equity issue. And I think it's raising the awareness that what you and Ken, and Mary initiated months ago now. But it's important. We're not just doing this because, we're trying to fill time on a Wednesday night here. And it'd be helpful to really lay that out, because the board's going to ask you that question and us that question. Who should be involved? Who should be in this discussion? How do we arrive at consensus? And that's a big challenge right there. But you're well equipped to do that. I mean, you guys have all got that experience. You've been down that road. So I don't have an answer, but I just wanted to put that thought out there. That'd be great if we could say, look down the road and say, okay, it's November 2021. Where are we? What have we done? What's our goal?
And Jack, I agree. That's a huge, big step, and one that I haven't really considered the total details of. But I would say the model that we just heard on broadband to residences is more of a grassroots one. And I was hoping to do something that, at least conceptually, would be more like the way capital improvement planning is considered in Arlington.
Yep.
And I think Holly has much more experience in that than I do. But I was hoping we could sort of model our public engagement off of an existing mechanism
Right.
that does that.
Yep.
Yeah, the process that the county went through for the community energy plan to get us to the incredibly bold and ambitious goal that DC only beat us to by a couple months of proclaiming that we get to net zero carbon emissions. That is the type of process that I'd be seeing or envisioning for this type of comprehensive plan element.
Yep.
All right. Well, we have a motion on the floor. So it's what we're voting on is whether this is with no edits. It sounds like no friendly amendments, that it is sent to the board from the commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, looks like we're past. So there we go. Well, Mike, you did get your home run. See that? And now, yeah, now, but I do think one of the things we could do, John and Mike, is kind of outline the energy. And you remember we had the environmental people brief us and how long it took them, 4 years to get the element in. I'm hoping that it's not 4 years for us to get the element in. But that might be something we reference. We don't have to do it in the letter, but I think we could reference. I can certainly mention that in the email to Libby, right? In terms of public engagement. Okay, thank you all. We've got one more, and it's like the baseball player. You know, we kind of, even though he's last at bat, important stuff. Frank, thanks so much, and I'm sorry people were going a little bit over tonight, but this was really an important discussion. So thanks for your patience. And Frank, over to you, my friend.
All right. No, it is important, and Rhea had actually teed this up with the board anyway, so I think it's important. So this won't hit them as a surprise. So no, I think it's good, and it's good work, Mike. I think it's an very important issue. Anyway, as some of you might be aware, we had an election earlier this month.
Did we?
Oh yeah.
Was it a dream?
Anyhow, President-elect Biden, I love to say that, is named an FCC Review Team headed by government attorney formerly at the FCC, John Williams, not the composer by the same name. And it also includes, he'll head it up, but it also on there, importantly, is Mignon Clyburn, daughter of Jim Clyburn, the House Majority Whip, who happened to play an important role in this election. So Mignon was formerly a commissioner at the FCC. I believe, I'm not sure if she served with Jonathan, but she also served as interim chair, first African-American woman to serve as chair of the FCC in between Tom Wheeler and Julius Janikowski. So she has already been in a position, and also serving on the review team is Edward Smitty Smith and Paul Dessau, both who had been at the FCC previously in the Wheeler FCC. And anyhow, they'll be tasked with looking at the FCC from the new administration's standpoint. And the new president does get to name the new chair. And there's already been a fair bit of speculation as to who that may be. Jessica Rosenworcel is the senior Democrat on the FCC now, so she's certainly considered a contender. Mignon Clyburn, if she is interested in it, probably she would be a strong contender as well. Jeffrey Starks is the other currently serving Democratic FCC commissioner. And it's possible that Mignon may pull a Dick Cheney. He was on the transition team to help name the vice president or whatever. And he said, "Hey, I think I'd be good at that." So we may get that. Anyhow, we're also going to have some changes among the Republican commissioners as well. Mike O'Reilly, currently serving, had been nominated for a second or another term. I think it might actually be a third term for him, second term anyhow. And he came out actually opposing the president's proposal to make changes to Section 230, which provides immunity to social media platforms. Anyhow, so O'Reilly questioned whether the FCC had authority there and questioned the First Amendment aspect of that. So anyhow, so the president went ahead and withdrew his nomination, as he's wont to do. So he did go ahead and nominate Nathan Symington, who from the Commerce Department, who had some role in the petition. The Commerce Department actually filed a petition for rulemaking with the FCC, which is somewhat unusual, and he had a role in that. So president went ahead and nominated him. They had the committee, I believe, had a confirmation hearing, but I think it's quite possible that the time may run out on Mr. Symington before he gets confirmed to a new term. So that may leave another opening on the FCC for a Republican FCC commissioner. The issues for the new FCC, President-elect Biden had said during the campaign that he would be interested in reimposing net neutrality rules, the Title II rules that were imposed in the prior FCC under Tom Wheeler. So it's something that we may see. And it's also expected that digital equity will play a role, and we may see a more expansive view of that. During the current FCC, we saw a big emphasis on rural broadband, but I think now during the pandemic, I think through CARES Act we did see a fair bit of money and emphasis on making sure that urban areas where affordability was a big issue for schooling, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a good chance we may see a broader emphasis on the digital equity question. Democratic Congress members have called on the FCC to pause any controversial FCC items, which has been somewhat of a tradition. And the two Democratic FCC members have aired their support for that. It's a long-standing tradition, but that doesn't mean much. CARES Act funding has been used by a number of states to close the broadband gap for K-12 students, and other states have actually used some CARES Act funding to provide hotspots for community health centers. So I think that's going to continue to be an issue. Anyway, that's my report.
Oh, thank you so much, Frank. And just two quick items. Martha couldn't make it tonight, but she had mentioned about, I don't know, I'll forward this in case you all didn't get it. It's the digital evidence management system policies engagement for the police. And they are going to have online public engagement for that. So that's something that we, I would love for one of us to engage and see what's going on there. I am going to be on the police chief recruitment engagement public thing this Saturday at 10 a.m. But I'll forward that to you all just in case you didn't receive it, just so you can, I'd love for one of us to engage in one of the, particularly the digital evidence piece. John, depending on your schedule, I know that's an area that you're on. So, and then in the other thing we'll go over in December's budget. We should have more information about budget, and hopefully we will have some feedback about the state legislative priorities. Frank and I, submitted, and thanks to all of you for your help. But I think, and we'll see what happens with the letters. We'll also see if we can get some final feedback before we all we end the 2020 year. So good stuff. Thank you
Mary,
all. Yeah.
Well, a question for you on the legislative priorities. One of the things I found in my research was that there were some potential regulatory issues that might need to be addressed. Do we know if Arlington County engages in regulatory affairs at the state level on which we might provide guidance similarly to the legislative agenda?
Jack, any idea? You might be better at answering that than
Yeah,
I
I'm
am.
not sure. I'm not sure Johnny could give you any aspect. I know Carly's been heavily involved with the state broadband commission and the legislation that's going on there. But from the regulatory perspective, I just don't know. Holly, do you have more insight in that than I have?
So this, Jack,
We can ask.
For context, this was specifically around the issue of records retention for the body cameras.
Yeah, no, we haven't been involved. I have not.
And
yeah,
I had identified a couple of issues that could be cured regulatorily by the Library of Virginia without legislation. And so I was just curious as to know whether we engage on those types of priorities as well.
I think we do, but it's not my shop that does it. And the whole body camera, retention useless has really been kept within the domain of the police. So we were at a distance. So that's the best I can.
Yeah, let's see. And when we ask about the legislative priorities, John, we can ask that question as well. It's a good one.
Great, thanks.
Mary, can I put a quick request on the table?
Absolutely, Mike.
If anyone on the commission is capable of this, I would sure enjoy a concise write-up about whether Arlington can or cannot connect residents to its fiber. During the 2 years I've been on the commission, I've mostly been laboring under the belief that it absolutely could not happen. And each time we meet again, I'm more doubtful about whether my understanding was accurate or not. And
Mike, let me summarize. Arlington County cannot connect residents to its fiber. It must create a separate legal entity.
And I'm completely open, John, to that. Here's how to get to the outcome you're looking for. You have to create this other entity. But most of the conversations, and perhaps I was just too dense to understand it, weren't saying, here's the one thing we would have to do to get to yes. We were basically saying, no, and do we need to put this in the legislative package? And so I'd just like to get a clearer description of what current law means and how we got there.
Yeah, that is what the presentation at the beginning of this was about. So,
and I love it. I love it. Well, I just was, I didn't know that was possible a year ago.
Yeah, I think Mike. I think it's John says. I think I defer to the county attorney's office because they've taken a position and.
I'm under no such strictures.
That's
I can opine wildly.
That's what an advisory commission can do. You know what I mean? Is probe the adequacy of that.
Right.
Yep.
All right.
Good
All right.
fortune.
Well, I'll entertain for the good of the order.
One last question on the budget. Will we see
David.
the numbers only at the meeting, or will we have a chance to digest it before the meeting?
If they get them out before, David, obviously we'll share it. We did ask, Frank and I, when we met with Christian, said we'd like to know what the rhythm is because, David, as you know, we really don't want to be the beginning of March giving feedback, right?
Yep.
We want to get ahead of that curve. We're trying to get aligned with the decision making, not running after it. David, great question. That was their plan. They thought it was going to be around December. They have not. So I mean, Jack, if you have anything to add about where they are in the process, that'd be great.
All I can tell you is I've been told to take some significant budget cuts, and I haven't had a discussion yet on what the impact is. But it's I don't have any guidance at this point.
Yeah, you don't have budget guidance yet, right? From the because remember
I've been cut.
that you've cut, right? And I remember Martha attended. Remember the county managers? Remember Frank? In December, they used to do that. So I don't know if they're on that rhythm. They might be behind this year. So David will stay tuned. That's our goal. We hope so. And obviously, we'd love for you to have a look at it before we meet.
And by the way, David, we'd accept donations. I mean, if you'd like to get.
Are we going to do a GoFundMe page?
All taxes, and you got plenty of them. But no, obviously early is better so that we have to give people time. But with that question, unless anyone's opposed, I will motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Be safe, everybody. Take care.
Yes, and happy Thanksgiving too.
Yes, enjoy.
Thanks,
Bye, Frank.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Angela. Welcome.
Oh, hey, Mary.